Good morning, all. Morning, morning. Morning, Ree. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Excellent.
So, good morning. Morning, Christina. Hi. So we've got quite a lot of people who have registered for this morning's webinar, over 150. So I would imagine people might still be just logging in and getting themselves settled. So we'll give everyone a few minutes just to settle in and get going. How are you doing, Ree? You good?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Good. I've had a challenging week. I had an allergic reaction over the weekend.
God.
So my face swelled up and I look like I've been in a boxing fight with somebody. So I was just hoping and praying that by this morning it would be back to normal.
It's a weird one actually for me this morning. It's the first time in God knows how many months that I've actually put makeup on and I forgot what to do. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, so yeah, that was a weird one.
And has your skin been better with the lack of makeup, do you think, or not made a lot of difference?
Not much different, to be honest, because for quite a few months I've not been wearing much makeup.
Yeah.
I've just been, obviously with having skin rejuvenation treatment, just been wearing my eye makeup. So it's actually, I've not really worn foundation for a long time anyway. So it feels nice to put makeup on because it looks like I've actually made an effort.
Feel a bit more human again.
Yeah, definitely. But like I say, I put my eye makeup on anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been weird this morning.
Your skin looks fantastic, so I'm sure people have questions about what you're doing, what you're using at home, and we can,
yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
We can talk through all the things that we're using. Okay, so welcome everyone, welcome to our webinar this morning. We are absolutely delighted to be hosting this webinar on behalf of Lynton Lasers. So my name's Hayley, I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Lynton, but I do have a clinical background. So I was a beauty therapist, finished my training nearly 20 years ago now. And the same for Ree, re-qualified in beauty. You've had over a decade of experience with lasers, I think, haven't you? And IPLs and
about 14 years, something like that.
Yeah. And Rhiannon actually has worked in lots of clinics using lots of different technology. She's currently one of our most experienced senior trainers at Lynton, and so she's got a loads of experience to share with us today. And she also teaches on our level 4 and level 5 qualifications as well. So this morning is it's quite a meaty subject actually, so settle yourselves right in. When we run a webinar, we usually take about an hour. Putting the content together for this, I would estimate it will be about 2 hours. So if you don't have a 2-hour slot this morning, that's fine. You will be able to watch it on catch up in your own time. If you need to take breaks and go out, you will be able to catch up on it. But it's such a fascinating subject, looking at skin rejuvenation with energy-based devices. There's a lot of choice. There's pros and cons to a lot of different options, and not one machine will necessarily suit all businesses. So the purpose of today is really just to go through an introduction. We can't go super in depth. That might be a full day course that perhaps we do in the future, but we will give a good overview, a good introduction to all of the sort of common, popular devices that you can use at the moment to rejuvenate the skin. So yeah, that's our premise really for this morning, and we'd love you to get interactive. I know some of you will have some really great personal experience of using the devices that we're about to talk through. So please drop us questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can and make it as interactive as we can as well. So let me share my presentation and we'll get started. So hopefully everybody is able to see my presentation. Sorry, our presentation. Is that up for everybody? Yeah. Now, I've lost the chat view, so hang on a second, bear with me. Let me just play around with my settings because I want to be able to see the chat as we go. There we go. Okay, that's better. All right, good stuff. Okay, so for those of you that are joining us for the first time this morning and you haven't been, introduced to Lynton before, we have been established for 25 years, and we are experts in aesthetic technology. So throughout that time period, we've been manufacturing just south of Manchester lots of different technologies that do skin rejuvenation. And we have a speciality in lasers, but we also have many years of experience in using and selling radio frequency and a variety of other technologies like LED lights, IPL, loads and loads of different types of lasers for skin rejuvenation. So we can hopefully give you a really nice unbiased overview of all the different technologies. So we're not just going to talk about the things that we supply, we're going to talk about some really good devices that are available on the market that we don't supply at the moment as well, just to give you a really good overview of the availability of devices for skin rejuvenation. And we'll start with some skin anatomy and physiology, and then we'll go into all of these different devices that are on the list. And I'm sure that we've missed some. There are other great devices out there and great technologies out there, but hopefully this just gives a bit of an overview. So we're going to start first of all just by looking at the skin and going through some of the anatomy, and then we'll pull back into this when we start to look at how these different devices interact with the tissue and what it is that they really focus on and specialize in. So the skin's main function is protection. It protects us from injury, from bacterial attack, from water loss. It does lots of other things as well. It's very multifunctional, so it helps with sensation, temperature regulation, etc. And it's split into three main layers, and we're used to talking about these: epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous layer. So on the very surface of the skin, you have the epidermis. The deeper layer of the skin is the dermis, and then underneath that you have the subcutaneous tissue. And there's a layer that we're going to talk about today, which is the SMAS layer, which you may not be familiar with, and that comes into a section that actually just sits in between the muscle and the skin. So it's underneath that subcutaneous layer. It's actually in different places in different parts of the skin, but that's a layer you might not be familiar with, and we'll be talking about it today. So we start by just taking a quick look at the epidermis, and it never fails to disgust me, this slide. I can't believe that's what it really looks like.
Great.
It's not attractive, is it?
No.
Luckily, we have lots of tools to make it look as lovely as possible. It's a good job that our cameras haven't got quite good enough to show us things on such a level as close as that yet. So that image there is the very surface of the epidermis, but the epidermis is actually got 5 main layers, and basically you work from bottom upwards: stratum basal, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and corneum. And you could spend a whole day looking at the epidermis and the cells that are active within the epidermis and what they do and the function, and there's an awful lot of information and content to learn, really, to become expert in this area. But as an overview, the epidermis is what we need to understand, I guess, about the epidermis is that cells are born, so to speak, in the basal layer. So you get cell division happening there, new cells are produced, and they migrate upwards through the layers until they reach the topmost layer. And as they're going through that process, they become more dehydrated, so they lose their water content, they become dry, flaky, very thin, keratinized cells, and eventually they will slough off the surface of the skin. And you can use things like exfoliation and sort of dermabrasion type devices to help encourage the removal of those very surface skin cells. And that is something which will actually help to stimulate new cells being produced in the basal layer. So the more that you exfoliate, the more cells are produced in the basal layer, and that helps with increasing the cell turnover. So it usually takes between sort of 15 to 30 days for a cell to move through all of the layers and slough off. But that does actually slow down with age. And things like psoriasis, they're related to the cells not sloughing off properly. So a bit of a malfunction really with this process of cell renewal. And so things like very dull skin, skin that's quite dehydrated, skin that just doesn't look as luminous as it could do, that can really be improved with topical products actually. So peels to help remove the surface of the skin and light forms of exfoliation. There's a nice little method here for just remembering the different layers. So Cher likes getting skin Botoxed amongst other things, I would say. And yeah, that just helps you to.
That one before. That's a new one for me, but I like it.
Yeah. And one of the key things as well that's going on within the epidermis is the production of melanin. And of course, it's one of those things that we see a lot of. We see an awful lot of this, and it can really make the skin appear older than its years, you know, when you have uneven production of melanin in the skin. And that can be due to many reasons, but the predominant reason is sun exposure. So when you are exposed to the sun, that will, as a normal process, become it will stimulate the production of melanin. So you go into the sun, you generate a suntan, that's melanin production, you know. And if it were happening all in perfect harmony, you would generate an even color over the skin. Well, ideally nothing, because you'd have your sunscreen on to stop it, but an even color on the skin. But you know, what can happen is if you suffer a sunburn at any time, or if you just have prolonged exposure to the sun, then you can actually damage the melanocytes, and their production of melanin can become a bit haphazard. So pigment can be dumped into areas, and that looks quite patchy on the skin surface. It could be that, you know, freckles, age spots, sun damage, lots of different ways to describe it. But one of the things that some rejuvenation devices are really good at is actually lifting out that melanin which has been placed in big patches within the skin. So not so much melasma, but just your normal photo damage and sun damage can be very easily treated with energy-based devices. So just looking then at the dermis, so sat just underneath the epidermis, this is now a major part of the skin, and it's actually comprised of two layers, the papillary dermis and the reticular dermis. So the papillary dermis is actually sort of, that's the top layer, and then reticular sits underneath that. And the papillary dermis has got these funny sort of spiny projections on it that kind of lock into the epidermis and help to hold those two layers together. And those little bumps are actually responsible for fingerprints on your fingers. And but the main layer, you know, the bit that we're, I guess,
I found this on the web.
Oh. My Siri is being picked up on my Apple Watch. Sorry about that. Take it off. Yeah, reticular dermis is where all the good stuff is, the connective tissue, and we do get that in papillary dermis as well, but mostly in the reticular dermis. So connective tissue, which we'll talk about a bit more in a second, lots of other structures within the reticular dermis as well, sweat glands, receptors, blood vessels, etc. But the bit that we are really focused on or concerned with when it comes to skin rejuvenation is this extracellular matrix. So the extracellular matrix consists of collagen. Okay, so we talk an awful lot about collagen in the skin, and the collagen is a very fibrous substance. So it's hundreds of millions of fibers. You can see them just in this diagram here, and they provide the strength and the support to the skin. So they're like really this structure of the skin, really helping to keep it firm and strong and supportive of all the cells within the dermis. Then also have elasticity. So elasticity is more about the flex, the stretch, the elasticity within the skin. And then you have the extracellular matrix as well. So this is a gel-like substance comprised of glycosaminoglycans, or the GAGs we typically shorten that to. Most notably, that's hyaluronic acid, but you do get proteoglycans and glycoproteins and other substances in there as well. So you've got fibrous elastin and collagen, and then you've got this gel-like glue sat around all of that within this extracellular matrix of glycosaminoglycans. And that's all providing support to the cells that are within here, and also that structure to the tissue. And that extracellular matrix is actually synthesized or produced in part by fibroblast cells. And the fibroblast cells, you can see one just in the middle here, they're responsible not just for collagen production, but also for the production of elastin and the glycosaminoglycans. Not actually just the fibroblast cell, but they're a major part of it. And when you sustain some tissue damage, you actually can stimulate the fibroblast cell. So you can trigger off what we call a wound healing process, stimulate the fibroblast cell to actually produce more collagen and elastin, and fresher, newer, more even collagen and elastin. So just underneath this, one of the layers, some people refer to it as like the deep dermis, some people refer to it as like the superficial muscle layer. In different areas of the face, it actually is slightly different, but overall, essentially, this is like a tissue sheet of collagen and elastin fibers and some fat cells as well. And it actually helps to connect the muscle to the dermis. So it does play quite a significant role when you're looking at facial elasticity and support. So this is actually the layer which, if you were having a facelift from a plastic surgeon, this is the layer that they would reach in and lift up and pull and tighten. So it's quite deep within the tissue. So there's lots of things that can, I guess, go wrong with the normal process of skin. Or perhaps go wrong is the wrong way to describe it, isn't it? There's lots of things that happen normally that we dislike. We don't really like pigmentation, we don't like red veins, dehydration or dull skin, open pores, they can be resolved quite nicely, lines and wrinkles, scarring, that could be acne scarring, it could be surgical scarring, it could be stretch marks, a general loss of that firmness or that elasticity, and a loss of volume as well. So this sort of group here at the bottom, lines, wrinkles, loss of firmness, elasticity, volume, a lot of that can be caused by dermal degradation, or injury to the dermis. So the normal sort of reduction in collagen production as we age, so we produce less collagen, we produce less elastin, we produce less glycosaminoglycans. We actually also find that the collagen cross-links, so it bundles together, it causes depressions in the skin, and that can cause these lines and these furrows and this loss of firmness. And so all of those things really are happening within the dermis, and we're able to make a significant improvement to a lot of these concerns that we see through energy-based devices. Now, a lot of them work by helping to remodel the dermis. So we're going to talk a lot today about wound healing, inducing dermal remodeling, and essentially what we're talking about there is causing a little bit of trauma to the skin. We're actually going to give it, with a lot of these devices, not all of them, but a lot of them, a little bit of trauma, a little bit of tissue damage, a controlled wound. And the reason we do that is because, as I said earlier, that stimulates dermal remodeling. So it leads to increased fibroblast production, and that leads to then synthesis of more collagen, elastin, and glycosaminoglycans. So by applying some kind of heat works particularly well. Heat, or it could be mechanical trauma, so it could be a physical trauma that you apply onto the skin or into the dermis. That's going to stimulate the fibroblasts that are going to go on to make collagen and elastin. In the process of producing collagen and elastin, your body will naturally remove what it considers to be old and degraded collagen and elastin. So you get this double whammy effect of not just producing more collagen and putting that into the tissue, but actually helping to heal and improve the collagen that is there at the moment as well. Now, that takes time, and it can take time to show results, and technology certainly got better in terms of instant results, but a lot of the procedures that you do for the skin with energy-based devices, if they're dermal remodeling, you know, you are not going to produce fibroblast cells overnight. They're not going to build these millions of collagen fibers within a week. You know, it can take 4 to 6 months to really see the true effects of skin rejuvenation, and that is why photographs are so important. So we're working at the moment on a document that's guidance on how to take the best quality before and afters for the skin, but it's something that it can be quite tricky to capture on camera, can't it, really? The subtle changes that you get. I think in person they look quite dramatic, and then on camera they can sometimes be a bit tricky to capture. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that a lot of clinics struggle with, taking good before and after photographs. You know, it's, yeah, you can't always get the best sort of visual results, if that makes sense. Like you said, you know, there's different things. I mean, it's even just a slight change in lighting from the before photograph. It's a slightly different angle that makes dramatic differences into before and after photographs. So yeah, I think it's something that is really difficult to capture, and something that, you know, with good practice can definitely come. And like I say, with this document that we're putting together, it should be really helpful for a lot of clinics.
Yeah, I know something that we would highly recommend that you do, taking photos for every single treatment that you do, and getting that lighting and the positioning as good as possible, because often when you are making these changes to the skin and it takes 4 to 6 months for someone to see the full impact of the results, don't get me wrong, they'll look fabulous the following week, but that full impact of the results being 4 to 6 months later, I think it's really important to try and get that on camera as best you can, so that people can look back at that original image and say, wow, you know, and we get that a lot in our clinic, don't we? They look back at that first image and go, wow, I can't remember my skin ever looking like that, because it changes so gradually and they're seeing it every day. So just a quick note really then on skin type. So we'll talk through which technologies are suitable for which skin types as we go today. The general rule really is just that as you move from skin type 1 to 6, you have an increased possibility of pigment change. You know, so darker skins are just more susceptible to hypo or hyperpigmentation. That's a decrease or an increase in pigment production, and that particularly is possible or likely to happen when you put inflammation into the skin. So if you are doing one of those sort of you know, controlled wound type treatments, then you do have to be more careful on skin of colour, so skin types 4, 5 and 6, because they're more prone to changes in pigment. That doesn't mean that all treatments are ruled out or difficult to manage. They're not. They're quite easy to manage, and you can do some really advanced treatments even on skin type 6. You just have to do it perhaps with a few extra precautions in place. So any questions so far, guys, before we move on then to look at our devices?
Just got a question from Tina. Looking at the grid charts that you can use for your before and after photographs. So I think, do you mean, Tina, the ones that you sort of, the like little boxes that you can put behind? So they tend to be great for like body treatments and stuff like that. So it's almost taking a measurement at the same time. Yeah,
I think so. So sort of like the grid that you would put onto the wall, or yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they're called actually.
We'll find some. Yeah. We'll find some, Tina, and let you know.
It's something that we are working.
We'll put it in our before and after guide. So we do have some actually that we can order through Deca. They're £235. I suspect you might find them cheaper somewhere, so have a little look and we'll see what we can find for you. Holy moly. Yeah. Okay, so right, I'm going to pass over to you then to talk us through LED.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm hoping you can all hear me okay. I know Sam mentioned earlier in the chat that I was sounding a bit tinny, so I hope you can hear what I'm saying. Yeah. But yeah, so starting off, looking at LED systems. So this is something that's a really popular option, certainly at the moment, but something that we've seen a lot of in recent years as well. So it's something that Lynton have worked with a lot. We've had it a lot in the clinics, and you know, for the 10 years that I've worked for Lynton, it is something that we've used a lot in clinic. So when we're actually looking at LED systems, essentially we're looking at LED phototherapy that works on the principle that living cells, so the cells within the skin, are able to absorb and are influenced quite a lot by light. But traditionally, we often associate light exposure with skin aging and skin damage, which is where your UV light comes in. And actually, when we're looking at light exposure, if we can use controlled levels of more visible light and light from the infrared part of the spectrum, so looking at your red, your infrareds and blue light, actually delivering low levels of these light energies from that part of the spectrum, we can find that it energizes the cells and it energizes more cellular functions. So it sort of stimulates more processes within the skin cells, which result in different things. So by delivering these low level light energy to the skin, it means that cells can regenerate a lot faster. So like Haley was saying earlier with the epidermis, and as we've got the different layers and it's going through the layers, it sort of starts at the bottom and works its way up. By incorporating LED treatments, we can stimulate the epidermis to turn over a lot quicker. And obviously by energizing the skin cells, it can in turn, by regenerating the cells a lot quicker, we can be left with younger looking, more healthy and radiant skin. So often following LED treatments, results with regards to sort of anti-aging and your collagen treatments can be very subtle, but what a lot of clinics will do, you've got two options with LEDs. You can either do them as a course of treatments, and it can be as a standalone course with LEDs, or you can combine them with other technologies. So you can combine them with peels, you know, with your microneedling, fractional lasers, which we're going to talk about later, to really help stimulate more healing, more collagen. Like it says there, blue light is brilliant for killing bacteria. So it's often used with in conjunction with acne treatments. But often just by combining your LEDs into other treatments or just doing a one-off session, clients will notice an immediate improvement. So you can get obviously more radiant skin, it's sort of appearing more glowing, you know, more hydration, a better skin tone, because what LEDs can be great for is really reducing inflammation in the skin. So any bits of redness, sensitivity, LEDs are fantastic for really healing the skin and improving that overall skin tone. Now, like I said, you can just do a standalone treatment and additions to treatment, or you can do it as a standalone course. So if you just flip to the next slide, I believe, Hayley. So yeah, typically, if you were looking at a course of LEDs, the recommendation is around 8 treatments. But the beauty of LED is that it's such a relaxing treatment. So there's no pain involved. You know, often it's sort of a light canopy, and it's quite a bright light. But I know a lot of clients will sort of liken it to being on the beach and being on holiday, and they always feel better when they've had some light exposure. You sort of almost getting a similar result to this, but obviously we're not using any harmful UV light. And actually by using LED lights, you get that immediate brightening. You know, your general well-being is a lot brighter, as well as more hydrated skin. Obviously with LED as well, there's no downtime whatsoever. Like I said, there's no pain with it. It's actually a lovely treatment to have, and something that, like I say, clients can just have as a standalone 15-20 minute treatment, and get results and get the effects immediately following the treatment. I think we've got some before and after photographs as well. Just adding on to there, so there's no risks with the treatment. It's low level energy, and it is suitable for all skin types, as well as treating darker skins and tan skins as well. So something that we do see an issue with certain treatments is people having UV exposure. And with UV exposure comes the risks of potential issues and unwanted reactions, whereas LEDs, there's very little contraindications to treatment, so very little things that could stop you doing a treatment.
Yeah, and this image comes courtesy of Dermal, who I think are one of the most well-known brands when it comes to LED in the UK. And yeah, you can see a very good result there, can't you?
Yeah, after only 10 weeks as well, it's fantastic.
Yep. I think that's I think it is subtle. You know, we know, don't we, Ree? We've had we've got a Dermalux in our clinic. You know, and I have them regularly. I think they're absolutely brilliant, but they aren't. You couldn't guarantee they were going to remove a deep line and wrinkle, and I don't think they claim to either. You know, I think this is an exceptionally good result. It is subtle. You know, and that's a general rule, really, isn't it? The less invasive the technology, the more subtle the result typically. But you can, you can get amazing results.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, like I say, just overall general well-being as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, you do get that instant radiance, and you have that glowing skin straight away. So great for if you've got any events coming up, you know, LEDs for it.
Yeah. So Helen's just asking, what kind of price would you charge for an LED session? So if you're doing an LED session just on its own, what kind of price around the UK have you seen people charging for that, Ree?
Typically, I think around £60 for just a standalone LED treatment, and obviously people incorporate it, so it's a bit more of a treatment, starting with a cleanse and stuff like that, and obviously finishing with SPF, but typically around £60 per treatment. Whereas if it's in addition to another treatment, so I know when in clinic, so in the Lynton clinic, if it's a case of a client wants to add the LED, we'll maybe add £10-20 onto an additional treatment. Whereas if we were adding it onto a treatment, let's say to stimulate more healing and calm any inflammation down, we often do it complimentary for them.
Yeah. I think if we're going to do something like our CO2 fractional ablative laser, then we would actively encourage them free of charge to come under this to just reduce their downtime, wouldn't we? So works really well. Post needle rollering, derma pens, needle pens, those sorts of things.
Actually, moving on from what you've just said about the CO2, obviously we will talk about CO2 shortly, but it was something that if a client had a CO2 fractional laser, we'd put them under the LEDs straight after the treatment, but would also encourage them to come in the following few days, so that we can monitor the healing, and we're stimulating more healing and calming inflammation down as well.
Good question here from Rachel about the difference between cheaper and more expensive makes of LED and the amount of LED light, for example, and different colours. So, I mean, I don't claim to be an expert here, but my understanding is that it's about the quality and quantity of photons that you produce. So it's emitting photons that are interacting with your skin, and the photons are little packets of light energy, essentially, and that energy is what's causing that photochemical reaction in the skin. So if you have a light bulb, that generates photons. If you have a laser, that generates photons, you know, and they're two ends of a very wide and diverse scale. And somewhere in there, you've got poor quality and high quality LED. So as you move up in terms of the quality of the actual diodes, the light emitting diodes, you will not only get a higher number of photons, so therefore more likely to have a reaction in the skin, but also you will get less of a range of photons. So ideally you want about 633 nanometers photons. Okay, so that means that they're a particular type of photon which is proven to be good at stimulating the fibroblast cell, for example. Okay, now you could have an LED that's sort of producing a lot of 600 nanometers, 650 nanometers, and only a small amount of 630 nanometers. Whereas on high quality LEDs, they'll usually say, you know, we deliver 633 nanometer photons with a plus or minus divergence of light, you know, 3% or something like that. So you're getting a very tight band of light that we know is going to give you a good result. So yeah, so Sam Hills has just added cheaper LEDs don't have anywhere near the same irradiance number of photons being emitted. Yeah, so more photons and the right wavelength of the photons as well. So yeah, Acne ones would be 420, I think, or about 400, 420 nanometers, something like that. Yeah. I don't know about green light. I have seen some studies on green light that have been quite interesting, but it isn't a wavelength that's commonly used in a lot of LED lights. So I think probably more research should be done on that one.
The more common ones, obviously, your blue light to destroy bacteria, great for acne treatment. Then you've got your slightly longer wavelengths, so your red light, brilliant for anti-inflammatory, and like your near infrared, looking at healing and collagen.
Mm-hmm. What are photons measured in? I don't know whether or not you can, and we might need to come back to you on this. I don't know if you can. That is a measurement or a specification that will be on any of the machines. What they mostly will talk about is power levels, number of diodes, and their wavelength range. So you can get a good comparison by, you know, looking at the specifications. So yeah, I'll have to come back to you on that one. Or Sam will have to explain it. What's per meter squared? Okay, what's per meter squared? It's good job we've got a physicist in the back to answer the difficult questions. Okay, so yeah, LED, lovely technology to have, nice to have.
Yes.
Subtle results.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, radio frequency. So one of my favourite treatments. I loved doing this treatment in clinic. Loved having it. Not had it for a long time, which I'm gutted about. But essentially, when we're looking at radio frequency, we're looking at now the radio wave part of the spectrum. So it's not a laser. We're looking at radio waves. And with radio frequency, how I tend to explain it is that as we pass the radio frequency handpiece over the skin, the handpiece which is in contact will emit radio waves. And as those radio waves are being absorbed into the tissue, the skin actually sort of resists the radio frequency waves. I sort of imagine it doesn't really like it. And what it causes is the water molecules within the skin to vibrate. So as these water molecules are vibrating, it causes that molecular vibration, it creates heat. And the idea behind radio frequency, like we were talking about earlier, is that as we're putting it and stimulating that heat into the skin, it triggers the fibroblast activity. So it triggers this wound healing response. So typically when we're looking at radio frequency treatments, we're looking at getting the skin to a temperature on the face of approximately 39 degrees, and the aim is to maintain for around 3 minutes. And by doing this, by getting the skin to that temperature and maintaining for 3 minutes, it's triggering that wound healing response, which in turn triggers the fibroblast activity, which is then inducing that synthesis of collagen. So again, with radio frequency, similar to LEDs in that results can be subtle, in that obviously it's stimulating the body's natural collagen, but it's again one of the most relaxing treatments to have. You know, I know like Kirsty and Emma in our clinic, when they're doing radio frequency, a lot of clients will fall asleep with it, and it was something that I used to find in clinic. Clients love having this sort of treatment in radio frequency because it just feels like a warm massage on the face, but it's such a relaxing treatment that actually does get some great results. But like we said, subtle. Maybe not as subtle as your LEDs. It is definitely stronger than your LED light therapy. But overall, because we're heating the skin as well, it triggers more circulation. So you're getting more nutrients to the skin, you're getting that healthy feeling, that healthy glow. You can get a reduction in fine to medium lines and wrinkles. Sometimes they completely disappear, and definitely an improvement in the deeper lines and wrinkles. And you get a nice rejuvenated tightening effect. And it's something that, again, with radio frequency, clients will have mixed responses in that whether they want to have their full face and neck treated, or what we found is just treating areas of concern. So for a lot of clients, you know, a main area was around the eyes. So radio frequency can work fantastic around that orbital bone, great for the finer lines around the eyes and getting sort of that stimulating more collagen and brow lift. You know, it's not to the point of surgery. So we always used to say in clinic, you know, if your client's coming in wanting literally lifting the skin up, this isn't going to get you there. But what is going to happen is that the skin's going to appear more rejuvenated. You are stimulating the body's own natural collagen, and it will result in tighter, firmer and younger looking skin. So it was something that a lot of clients absolutely loved. So if we just go on to this slide, when we're looking at radio frequency on the market and in the industry, there are different application modes. So you have got monopolar, which requires a grounding pad. So essentially, when we're looking at radio frequency, we are delivering a current. And we have got our positive and negative, so plus and minus electrodes. And with monopolar, all it essentially is we've got a grounding pad, which may be negative, which is somewhere on the client's body, and the handpiece that's applied to the skin is the other electrode. So let's say it's a positive. And as soon as that handpiece is in contact with the skin, the radio frequency just wants to get to the other electrode, wherever that may be on the body. So what can happen with monopolar, I don't think I've really seen it used that much recently. I've not seen people using it for quite a number of years. I think the last doctor that I saw using it was about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. Because typically with monopolar, although you can get fantastic results, treatments can get extremely hot. They're extremely uncomfortable. So you actually get a lot of heat in the epidermis. And a lot of the time, you know, it's medics that will use monopolar. You need anaesthetic because it is quite a painful treatment, I believe. I've never actually experienced it myself, but it can be quite a painful treatment. I think I've heard of people sort of almost having quite a bit of blistering afterwards as well. I don't know whether you've experienced it, Hayley, at all.
Yeah, so not so much blistering, and I haven't had one of these treatments myself, but I know a couple of clinics that have used a well-known version of monopolar RF in the past. And yeah, just as you say, because the current is so directional, you know, and it's quite contained to a small area of the skin, then yeah, discomfort, side effects, but great results.
Oh, amazing results. Yeah, fantastic results.
But it's kind of evolved from there, hasn't it? It's evolved into now.
So when we're introducing your bipolar and multipolar radiofrequency, we've still only got the two poles. We've still only got positive and negative. You know, with multipolar, we've not introduced a completely new electrode. It's not happened. But what happens is, rather than having one of the electrodes somewhere else on the body, like this grounding pad, both of the electrodes are in the handpiece, so they're in contact with the skin at all times. And depending on how far apart your electrodes are, depends on how deep the radio frequency can get. So I think we've got our tripolar handpiece.
Yeah. So this is our tripole handpiece, you can see there. So you've got three electrodes, and at any one time, one of them will be positive or negative.
Yeah, and what it does, it continuously changes throughout the treatment. So as we are building up that heat in the skin, as we're passing the handpiece over the skin and we're building that heat, it results in a more even and more uniform heating in the deeper layers of the skin, so that we're able to trigger that wound healing response. But essentially, because it has developed since monopolar, it means that treatments are a lot more comfortable for clients. So again, it's a relaxing treatment, it's quite a low risk treatment, and it's suitable for all skin types. So with this treatment, obviously we don't advise that you treat active skin exposure, in that they've had UV very, very recently in case they've burnt the skin. We don't want to be putting heat over that. But actually, with regards to, you know, residual tans, it's very similar to your LEDs, and it's generally suitable for everybody. And you can see there, from using the bipolar, you're getting a more bulk heating in the deeper layers of the skin, which is where we want to be stimulating more collagen. I think if we go on to the next slide now. So yeah, for full face and neck treatments, it's approximately between 45 minutes to 60 minutes for a full treatment. And the general recommendation is that your client's going to need a course of 6 treatments, and that's one treatment around every 2 to 4 weeks. There's very little downtime, if anything, just a small amount of general redness. Again, it's low risk, it's suitable for all skin types, and then we generally recommend maintenance about 1 every 2 to 3 months. But actually, it's such a good option for clinics and for clients. We found in clinic that clients will start off having their course of 6, and they'll have a treatment, let's say once every 2 weeks. So they'll complete the course within 3 months, and then we will ask them, you know, come back in a couple of months so we can get you before and after photographs, because it does take time for the collagen to be fully apparent in the skin, for results to be fully there. But often clients don't want to wait 2 to 3 months. It's something that we found in clinic, because they love the treatment so much, and you know, there's no real downtime with it. It's a relaxing treatment that works and stimulates collagen. Clients will be having this treatment like once every 4 to 6 weeks, which isn't a problem for maintenance. It's something they almost got addicted to, because it's not painful. It's a lovely treatment, relaxing treatment to have, and results can be amazing, although can be subtle.
We love radio frequency, don't we? You and me, Ree. We love it.
Absolutely love it. I love the time when
constantly on it in our clinic.
Yeah, I've got to bring the radio frequency system home, and oh my god, I was on it all the time.
So I mean, the reason I guess I would choose this as a consumer is for the reasons that it's so low risk, it doesn't hurt, and I feel that what I'm doing is I'm really assisting with reducing my collagen increasing my collagen production. Okay, so I'm getting my radio frequency is one of those technologies where it makes your own skin function better. You know, rather than putting something into it, causing too much trauma that could have side effects, it's just a really subtle way to get your own skin to rejuvenate and to regenerate and keep it in the best possible condition. Now, that doesn't mean I don't combine it with other things, because I do. I have Botox, I have filler, I have ablative resurfacing as well, a bit of IPL when I need it. But the radio frequency is a really good non-invasive, regular treatment that really perks you up, doesn't it? It really, really makes your skin look fantastic, and it's so easy to combine with other skin modalities. Yes, you can treat up to a skin type 6, so all skin colours, and pretty much all skins, isn't it? So, who are the people that you would definitely not treat with radio frequency?
Someone who's got any major sort of reconstruction metal pins or plates in the area. If they've recently had injectables, so Botox and fillers in the past 2 weeks, we'd just wait 2 weeks until after that treatment. And if someone's basically burnt in the sunshine in the past few days, I wouldn't want to be treating. But other than that, I generally
maybe not like a rosacea, you know, if they've got a lot
not
of
aggressive rosacea, no.
Yeah. So looking at it from a commercial perspective, this is a good treatment to have on your books for ongoing revenue. Okay, so if you look at the makeup of an aesthetic clinic, a lot of the treatments that you do are what we would call problem solvers. So someone has unwanted hair, you treat the hair, you finish treating the client. You do tattoo removal or you do red vein removal, you're problem solving. Okay, radio frequency is in a different bracket. You know, this is an ongoing revenue generator for your business. It's widely available for most of your clients. So when you're looking at return on investment from assets, that's where radio frequency is quite good, because any client that's having your injectables, that's having advanced procedures, can still have radio frequency. Those clients who are shy of needles or advanced procedures can have radio frequency. Male or female, treats the most common concerns, no side effects, no worries, operated by a therapist, a clinician, and also people will book it once a month. You know, it used to be when, you know, back in the day, I'd be doing my electrical muscle stimulation once a month on those regular clients, you know, every single month. Now it's radio frequency. And the beauty is we charge, what, £99 to £150 per treatment. And people will book that with us every month. So, you know, looking into the future, you've got that.
You've got clients for
steady revenue. You're not constantly marketing for a new client. So from a commercial perspective, you know, we like radio frequency, don't we? We're big fans.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got some before and after photographs actually now.
Yeah. So this is a good example of how it can get that tightening in a subtle way. So this sort of area here, you can see. Nice that you can obviously treat not just on the face as well, so you can come down onto neck and onto the chest, décolleté as well. Okay. So IPL then, Ree.
So another one of my favourites. So yeah, IPL. So looking at intense pulse light. So this is where sort of when we're comparing different treatments for skin rejuvenation, IPL is where we're really focusing and we're able to focus more on improving skin tone. So looking at uneven pigmentation such as sun damage, you know, freckles, sunspots, age spots, redness, thread vessels, rosacea, acne. This is where IPL comes into its own. And when we're looking at IPL, for some of our customers who've got some of our IPL systems already, we have got typically 2 IPL handpieces. When we're actually looking at IPL, we can section them off. So typically, looking at using wavelengths between 500 and 600 nanometers, this is where it's fantastic for improving overall skin tone. So it's your slightly shorter wavelength, so our 585 handpiece, that is phenomenal at treating vascular lesions, pigmentation, acne, and that overall skin tone. Whereas using slightly longer wavelengths, so between 600 and 700 nanometers, so our 650 handpiece, we tend to use and almost look at it as keeping good skin looking good. So you've got a skin type and a client coming in with no real pigment concerns, they haven't really got any vessels, any vascular irregularities, but they want something more, they want something to maintain good skin and for stimulating collagen. So this is where we predominantly use our 650 handpiece. And actually what we'll talk about later on is combining the two. So what happens with IPL and using IPL for skin rejuvenation, Sorry, Hayley, I'm making you
All
go
right.
back.
No.
So with IPL, it works in a very similar way to hair removal. It's just we're targeting different things. So for instance, if we're looking at using slightly shorter wavelengths, so our 585 handpiece, which targets more hemoglobin, so it's targeting blood and melanin, it's got a higher melanin absorption than our 650 handpiece. It's fantastic for treating that epidermal excess pigmentation. So that could be, like I say, from freckles to sun damage, sunspots, age spots, things like that, where the skin's just sort of dumped, as you said, excess melanin in certain patches. This is where your 585 handpiece comes in slightly shorter wavelengths to essentially lift out that excess melanin. So it almost drags the excess melanin up to the surface of the skin. And once that pigment has been treated, what we see when treating pigmentation is that the pigment will darken. And it will darken for around 1 to 3 weeks and then sort of form a little microcrust on the surface. So it's not quite as bad as a scab, but it's a little bit more than dry, flaky skin. But once that excess pigment has flaked away, the client will be left with less excess pigmentation, so the skin looks more even in colour. And a similar thing happens when we're treating a vascular lesion. So when we're focusing on the blood and the redness, so that could be broken capillaries around the nose, across the cheeks, when we're treating rosacea. And it, like I say, it works in a similar way, but rather than targeting the excess melanin, we're targeting that superficial hemoglobin. So we're targeting the blood in that superficial broken vessel. And again, as we pass the light over the skin, it heats up the hemoglobin in that broken vessel, heats up that vessel and shuts the blood vessel down. So what we see when we're treating vascular lesions is that sometimes they can actually disappear straight away. And clients who, you know, you might have a client coming in who's been annoyed by this one particular vessel on the cheek that they've spent years covering up and they've hated it for years, and in one almost split second, in, you know, a few minutes, that vessel's completely disappeared. And, you know, again, it can be life-changing, along with sort of almost treating hair removal. Treating certain vascular lesions can be life-changing for clients. And, you know, you can get some fantastic results with just treating individual lesions. But as well as that, we actually love and have been using IPL more so for general skin rejuvenation the past few years. And again, it's something that whenever I'm out training or like talking to people, they sort of comment on my skin. And I've got to say, it was IPL that completely changed my skin a few years ago. And it's that I predominantly use to maintain results. So like I say, with IPL, you've got the two options. You can either use your 585 handpiece of slightly shorter wavelength, which would typically just stick to using on paler skin types. So typically it's skin types 1 to 3 who would suffer with more pigmentation that we can treat, such as sun damage, vascular lesions and rosacea. Whereas your 650 handpiece is great for stimulating collagen and maintaining good skin. And that can be used on skin types 1 through to 5. So from a light skin type to a darker Asian skin. And when we're using IPL, again, there'll be some people in the audience who have experienced IPL and you feel heat. So this is where we're getting to slightly more aggressive treatments. You know, it's not the most relaxing treatment, but it's certainly not unbearable. But as we pass the IPL over the skin, it's causing that heat. And again, a lot like our radio frequency, that heat and that trauma that's being delivered to the skin stimulates fibroblast activity. So it triggers that wound healing response, which will in turn stimulate the production of more collagen. So as well as resulting in that more even skin tone and reducing broken vessels, pigmentation, we can stimulate more collagen at the same time. Now, when we're looking at IPL treatments, again, we typically recommend a course of treatments, and that can be anywhere from 4 to 6 treatments. for collagen, whereas vessels and pigment don't tend to need that much. And we look at treatment approximately once every 4 to 6 weeks for clients, and then maintenance, again, very similar to your radiofrequency, about once every 2 to 3 months for collagen. Whereas often for treating vessels and pigment, if they're sticking to the aftercare, you might never see them again for your vessels and pigmentation. Whereas collagen, a lot like your radiofrequency, it's almost a continuous revenue for your clinic as well. Obviously, with IPL, there are a few risks, a few more risks with IPL. So again, we don't want to be treating any tan skin types. So anyone who's had recent UV exposure, obviously fake tan, we want it to be completely off the area and not applied for 2 weeks. Going back to UV exposure, it must be a minimum of 4 weeks, but we need to wait for any bit of colour to have completely dropped as well. And obviously, as we are getting to higher energy treatments, we are at slightly more risk of unwanted reactions, such as blistering, scabbing. Although it is very rare for it to happen, it is something that we need to make clients aware of. We also use IPL for treating acne as well. So again, fantastic results with acne.
And I think that that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of people would perceive IPL to be in the bracket of a hair removal device. Yeah, and in truth, that is because it is very difficult to build an IPL that is excellent for vessels and pigment. Okay. Whereas at Lynton, we've always had extremely high quality IPL, and therefore we've had amazing results on skin rejuvenation with IPL. So IPL is most certainly a modality that, you know, you shouldn't put it in just the bracket of hair. You know, you can get so much more out of it, and some absolutely fantastic results from it, as you can see here. So this one's courtesy of Laser Skin Solutions. So that's Kerry Belber, who's been on a few of our webinars, and you can see, you know, like you say, life-changing, amazing vascular results there. Even things as advanced as port wine stains, where the vessels are incredibly thin, really difficult to treat, we can get good results, and rosacea as well. So it takes something quite special to be able to treat rosacea. You've got to have extremely short pulses. You've got to have the ability to alter your delays. You've got to have the ability to alter your pulse train, your pulse sequence. So not all IPLs are created equal, but certainly with a Lynton, this sort of result on rosacea, you know, you can treat very effectively rosacea. And pigment as well. So you can see some nice before and afters here, pigment on the hands. Of course, this rejuvenation that we're discussing can be on the chest, could be on the hands. Do we need to change anything if we go off the face, Ree?
Typically, we look at using slightly lower settings because obviously it's a more bony area. So typically on the décolleté, you know, you've got more light and heat reflection. So we do typically just take the settings down a little bit. And something that Lynton do have within their protocols is separate settings for off-face treatments, such as the neck, the décolleté, and the back of hands.
Someone just asked me to flip back to the port wine image there. So
yeah, Helen, that's yours.
We can answer some questions regarding IPL.
Yeah, let's have a look. So we had
so these, I mean, these are brilliant, aren't they? You know, these sort of sunspots, age spots, they can lift really nicely and easily from the skin.
And typically the darker the pigment, the better results.
Yeah.
So almost the worse the condition looks, typically the better and quicker results you do tend to get. So just answering, before we move on to Illumi, a question from Tina. So looking at radio frequency versus 650 IPL. So yeah, I do love them both. And with regards to which you would use and how they would differ, with regards to collagen, I don't know if you'd agree, Hayley, but I sort of say this very similar in the amount of collagen that you get. Possibly a little bit better with 650. maybe because it is a little bit more slightly more aggressive than radio frequency. But I think the key thing with RF is that it is suitable for anybody. And when you've got that client who doesn't really want a slightly uncomfortable treatment, or maybe they have UV exposure, this is where your radio frequency comes in, because there aren't many contraindications, whereas 650 you do have to be an IPL laser, you do have to be more careful. So that's how I'd sort of look at it. And if I was looking at treating a client, it depends on what my client wanted. If it was somebody who didn't want an uncomfortable treatment, RF's the way to go, and you'll still get fantastic results. So I hope that answers your question, Tina.
I think it's a question most people will have as they're looking at the market and looking at devices, and we get asked all the time, which one should I buy? And I say all of them. You kind of do need they're all different, they've all got pros and cons. Oh, am I frozen? I look like I've frozen there for
you did for a second, but I think you're back now.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so you might come out of this presentation thinking, I want them all, you know. That's great if you've got the budget, but most people don't. So how do you work out what's best for you and what's best for your business? We can walk you through that if you like. So we would start by asking things like, who's your typical client? You know, what's the demographic of that client? What else is in your local area? So what are your competitors using? We'd ask about how you feel about the level of advanced treatments you want to do. We'd ask about budget, we'd ask about all sorts of different things, but you can, by going through that process, work out what would be the best one to bring into your business. And there's a lot of crossover. So a lot of these devices do a similar thing. You know, but they each have their own sort of unique pros and cons. I would say, well, if you're looking at hair removal and rejuvenation, IPL is a no-brainer over radio frequency. But if you're looking at body sculpting and skin rejuvenation, then you know something like our Promax Lipo would be ideal. So really, you know, it depends on your business, it depends on the commercial situation. But if you're not sure, we can go through a series of questions to help try and narrow it down and work it out for you, what would be the most suitable.
I'm just going to answer a quick question from Monica. So you've asked about a contraindication for IPL. I'm assuming you mean the pill if it's contraindicated. So it's not necessarily contraindicated, but obviously, as you've mentioned, melasma/cloasma can be a side effect of the pill and pregnancy and various hormonal changes. So when we're looking at melasma, if a client does suffer with melasma, we don't advise that they're treated on the face, purely because there is a very high risk of the melasma actually going a lot worse. So we don't advise the treatment of melasma with these systems.
I've got another question in the Q&A here, which is, what do you think is the best LED machine, Dermalux or Omnilux? Well, I've had personal experience of both, so we will answer this one. Right now, if I was to advise you to make a choice between the two, I would say Dermalux, just because the network of support, in terms of results, I think they're both excellent. You get excellent, amazing results with both. But Dermalux, you know, the marketing, the brand awareness, the support, the number of people in that business, and being a British company as well, I think goes a long way. So if you're on the fence between which, I would probably look at a Dermalux now.
Perfect. So next one that we're going to talk about is Illumi facial. So Illumi facial is essentially a combination treatment combining a superficial skin peel with IPL. So combining peel and light technology. So if we were sort of to go back to when we started, and Hayley, you were talking about the epidermis and the different layers of the epidermis, and obviously as we start at the basal layer of the epidermis, the cells in the basal layer tend to be quite juicy, quite healthy, but obviously as they start moving up the layers of the epidermis, that's when they start drying out, they become quite dry, they essentially Bad. But when we are looking at obviously exfoliating the skin, if we've got a skin that hasn't had a lot of exfoliation, we get a build-up of dry, dead skin cells on the surface of the skin, which then have pockets of air between those cells. And if we were to pass, let's say, an IPL over that skin where you've got this build-up of dead skin cells and pockets of air, we don't get the best absorption of light into the skin. So this is where our combination treatment comes in, and this is where Illumi facial was introduced. So with Illumi facial, we combine a superficial AHA peel combined with IPL technology. And what we do with Illumi facial is that peel is using AHAs, so alpha hydroxy acids, to help dissolve and break down the keratin bonds between the skin cells, which will then help with exfoliation. So the build-up of dead skin cells on the surface is reduced. We get rid of the pockets of air as well, and just by doing the peel, we'll be stimulating faster cell turnover. So we already get that fresher skin coming to the surface. But then what we do within Illumi facial is immediately after we've applied and removed the peel and got rid of the dry dead skin cells, IPL is introduced immediately afterwards. And within Illumi facial, we actually combine both 650 and 585 IPL, depending on client's results and a client's concerns. So you can see this lady in particular, she had 4 Illumi facial treatments. So that was a combination of peel and IPL. And overall, you can see amazing improvement in overall skin tone. She looks like a completely different person for me. You know, the sort of sun damage, the sunspots that she's got on her face. I know she has got a little bit of broken vessels on her cheeks as well. You know, the pigment, what is key to note on this photograph, the pigment that was treated was checked by a dermatologist beforehand, which we do recommend.
Advanced pigment, isn't it? There's quite a lot of
yeah, it's quite
larger ones as well.
Yeah, so that was checked beforehand, and we were able to continue with the Illumi facial treatment. You can see absolutely phenomenal results for anti-aging. You know, not only is her skin looking more even in tone, you know, the pigment's pretty much gone, the vessels on her cheeks has gone, but I can see an improvement in collagen sort of in between the brows as well. Just overall, she looks a bit plumper and fresher as well. So fantastic results with that lady. I think so this is from our clinic. We've got some more amazing results from some of our customers with.
Yeah, so I've grabbed some of these off Instagram because we don't yet have the all of the original images for them, but you can see here this is a cosmetic clinic in Poole. They've posted some incredible results here with their Illumi facial, just 2 sessions.
Yeah.
So brilliant for rejuvenating that acne prone skin. And again here, just this one, that's 1 Illumi facial.
I mean, that's amazing.
The redness, the breakouts, the pigment.
Yeah, definitely. Again, pigment there. From Andrea in the audience.
Yeah, Andrea. Rosie, I can see you raising your hand. I'm not sure if you want to ask a question in the chat, or there's a Q&A option as well. So if you pop the question into there, we can help. And this is a great one as well, isn't it?
Oh, amazing. I don't think I've seen this one actually.
Perfect skin for Illumi.
Yeah, definitely. And again, with Illumi, obviously you do recommend a course of treatments, but often clients will see an improvement and get that sort of, again, radiant skin immediately after one session.
Yeah. We talk about it as like airbrushing. The marketing around this treatment is filter free, because that's like putting a filter on your skin, literally, isn't it, on social media? And obviously it's sort of linked to that selfie filter idea. But I mean, it literally, the lighting in this room isn't brilliant, but Illumi facial just does this amazing, gives you this flawless, amazing, even skin. You know, for me now, and the same for Ree, if you look at us, the minute we get any kind of little brown mark or red vein or something like that, straight under Illumi, IPL to get it evened out, to give us this really nice, flawless colour, essentially. Which
actually, going back to when we started, going back to when we started, I said I've not worn makeup in months, and it wasn't necessarily down to lockdown, it's down to this. It's down to having Illumi facial that I actually don't need my foundation anymore. You know, I just literally put a bit of tinted moisturiser, tinted SPF on, and I'm pretty much good to go.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to then just talk through ablative and non-ablative lasers. So to move now into the laser category, then, you know, we are going to be talking about some more advanced conditions and interactions with the skin, in particular ablative skin resurfacing. So I want to start just by first of all discussing the difference between ablative versus non-ablative lasers. Okay, so these terms are thrown around quite a lot. We get loads of questions about, you know, what's the difference between the two. Well, they're actually both light-based energy. So they're both wavelengths of light, or they can be they can be all sorts of different wavelengths of light, but predominantly they are absorbed by water in the skin, and they create heat as a result. Okay, so the light is placed onto the skin, and that's absorbed by the water within the skin. It creates heat, and you'll get trauma. You know, that heat will create that trauma. And a non-ablative laser will heat up to the extent where it reaches about 55 degrees or so. So that's good. That's a nice amount of trauma. You'll get some dermal remodeling with that, similar to, you know, your radio frequency. But it doesn't ablate the skin's tissue. Now, an ablative laser gets to approximately 100 degrees C, and that ablates, essentially vaporizes the skin. Okay, so the difference really between ablative and non-ablative is the temperature that you get to, and that's determined essentially by how well the skin absorbs the wavelength. So how easily it is absorbed by water. So different wavelengths will either be ablative or non-ablative, but the difference being essentially how hot does it get. You know, and if you get into 100 degrees, you're actually going to ablate the tissue and cause that vaporization. So actually going to completely destroy those cells from the skin. So the laser energy is absorbed by the water within the tissue. It heats rapidly, so up to 100 degrees C. So you might think, wow, that sounds painful, but surprisingly the pulse durations are incredibly short still, so it happens really rapidly. Some of these lasers can be quite deep, some of them can be quite shallow, so actually they're not in a level of discomfort necessarily over and above IPL in some cases. So yeah, that's your ablative versus non-ablative laser. And then we hear this term fractional. So what does the term fractional mean? So any laser, whether it is any laser, whether it's ablative, non-ablative, whether it's Q-switch, whether it's long pulsed, can be delivered in a fractional mode. So fractional essentially just means, rather than treating the entire skin, we put on a little fractional lens, which essentially just allows the laser to come through in these tiny columns that you can see on the skin. So it treats in micro spots rather than the entire surface area of where the laser is applied to the skin. So this can be ablative or non-ablative. See these little red columns going in? That's a fractionalated laser beam. So the laser's going into the skin, the water is absorbing the laser, it's creating heat. But what it's doing is it's heating in those columns. And that means that all the skin around those columns doesn't get exposed to the laser. Now you might get heat kind of spread out into those areas, so you might still get some heat trauma, but it's not directly treated by the laser. And therefore, when it comes to skin healing and downtime, risk of side effects, that is all improved because you've got this healthy tissue in between the treatment zones, and that allows the skin to just heal a lot faster. So you would usually fractionate a laser beam so that you can increase healing time, decrease your downtime, reduce the impact of side effects. And so ablative fractional will leave the skin looking a little bit like this. So you're going to ablate, so you're going to actually remove tissue, so you can see a whole section of tissue there removed from the skin. And it's in these fractional microspots. So you could expect to see several of those microspots all around a patch of skin. And we've got some pictures of that just to show it in a bit more detail later. So there's two main types of ablative resurfacing laser. So when we talk about ablation, that word is synonymous really with resurfacing. Because if you're ablating, you're taking off the surface of the skin, aren't you? Like resurfacing that skin. So the two main wavelengths, types of laser that we see are Erbium YAG, that's a 2940 nanometer wavelength, or a CO2, which is 10,640 nanometers. So Erbium YAGs tend to be a bit shallower, CO2s tend to be a little bit deeper, good for those deeper lines and scarring. So this is a CO2, somebody who's had a CO2, and this is 3 days after treatment. So you can see this isn't a light-hearted lunchtime peel. Now, with that said, you can control CO2s really well now to make them superficial or deep. So we use a CO2 in our clinic, and it's a product called a Smart Side, which has an application called the Cool Peel. Now the Cool Peel gives you nowhere near this kind of downtime. It's quite, it heals extremely fast. You're a bit red, you know, after the treatment, but the healing time is rapidly improved. But for someone who's got a condition like extremely deep wrinkles, lots of laxity, very, very deep acne scarring, actually you will get the best results with a more invasive treatment like a deeper CO2. And then after 7 days or so, you can expect the skin to have resurfaced itself. So epidermal and dermal healing is still going on, but the skin will look, you know, pretty much back to normal within 7 days. CO2 is absolutely beautiful for treating deep dermal problems. So those very deep lines of wrinkles, laxity and scars, as I mentioned, but it can also help with just generally improving vessels and pigment, and just helping to generally even out and remodel the whole skin. So this sort of you know, line and wrinkle and folds in the skin, they can respond extremely well to even a single treatment, just one treatment of CO2. As you can see here, these lip lines, really difficult to treat with most modalities, can be improved dramatically with CO2. Again, you can see here has improved the pigment, but also had a massive improvement on the laxity and the lines within the skin here. So you would typically only do 1 or 2 sessions if you were using this in deep mode. You might do several more if you were using the cool peel type mode that I mentioned earlier. Huge range of applications. So for those of you in the audience that are prescribing medics, there's all sorts of different things. Removal of benign skin lesions, rhinophyma that you can do with CO2s. So a really versatile rejuvenation skin tool that you can use. If you're going to do one of those deep treatments though, as you can imagine, this skin is quite at risk of infection, okay, and a flare-up of cold sores. So it's advised, in fact we insist at Lynton when we sell one, that it's done under the supervision of a prescribing medic, so that you can prescribe antibiotics and you can prescribe antivirals after the treatment. Of course, with it being a little bit of a deeper, more aggressive treatment, then it is riskier on darker skin types. You know, we've got CO2 users using our Smart Side in the UK here who treat skin types 4s and 5s with it really successfully, but they're just adding in pre and post treatment support with topical products that control tyrosinases essentially, so they're controlling the pigment production for the skin pre and post treatment, just to manage that chance of side effect or pigment shift. And it's difficult to use a CO2 on areas that aren't the face. The face actually heals incredibly well versus the body. For those of you that have ever done different bits of rejuve on face or body, you'll notice that the body takes a much longer time to heal. So it can be quite tricky to do, and not really recommended to do deep CO2 anywhere other than the face. So another form of ablative resurfacing is Erbium YAG, and again you can get Erbium YAG in very strong, let's say, or gentler forms, and we have at Lynton a very gentle form of erbium resurfacing, a 2940 nanometer wavelength, and we actually call this our resurface. It's a handpiece which you can add on to a number of different machines at Lynton, and this is going to do the resurfacing, so it's going to ablate the skin surface. But what it does is, what we've done is we've actually made it's fractional. We've made the micro spots a little bit bigger than usual, just to spread the energy out. We've elongated the pulse duration to give us a nice long pulse. And what that's essentially doing is ablating the very surface of the epidermis, but packing deep, deep heat into the dermis. So you're quite hot after this treatment, quite red, but surprisingly comfortable when you're actually doing it. But because it's treating that surface epidermis, retexturizing or getting that cell renewal going, then it's brilliant for epidermal concerns like your congestion, your pigmentation, melia, brilliant. And then when you get to the dermal issues like the stretch marks, the scarring and the wrinkles, again, excellent results with it. So this is a really nice modality because there's no blood. There's very, very, very low risk of infection post-treatment, and it is comfortable enough to be done without anaesthetic. So because of those reasons, you don't need to be a medic. You can be a level 4. We advise being a level 4 qualified practitioner. So you're ablating the skin surface and causing some deep dermal heating. Can you see the little fractional micro spots just on this? So this is just immediately after treatment. You can see someone's quite red there. And they will be quite red for 2 to 3 hours before it starts to calm down, maybe even a little bit pink the following day, depending on how many passes you've done and how many stacks you've used. But if you look very, very, very closely at the skin, what you'll see is these micro spots. And each area of that sort of dark brown that you can see is where the tissue has been ablated. It's been gone through necrosis, so it died essentially, and it's sort of keratinocytes are coming to the skin surface now to flake off. So the skin will be a bit flaky, and you know, you'll experience that little bit of erythema maybe for a couple of days. This is suitable for all skin types, so skin types 1 to 6, but again, as you move towards your skin types 4 to 5 and 6, you're going to look at controlling the pigment production with topicals pre and post treatment. So I'll go through some of the results, but again, this is I know we'll have some users of this technology in the audience who will tell us how much they love it, because everyone who has this handpiece absolutely adores it. But there's lots of images from lots of our clinics online and on our website for you to have a look at. This is one actually from the Lynton. Say again?
This is one of my clients.
Oh, did you do this one?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, talk us through it.
So this lady in particular, she was very, very slim. You know, she was really like health conscious. She went to the gym, everything like that. She'd had babies. She'd obviously lost weight, and she'd got some slackening on the skin on her abdomen. And her main concern was sort of just above her tummy button that you can see, and it was a mixture of sort of stretch marks, but also just skin laxity. And because it was only a really, really small area, we tried doing resurface, but I said obviously the usual, you know, you're probably going to need a course of treatment, but this is actually only after 2 sessions. So this was two sessions for this lady, and it was possibly a couple of months after her second session, the photograph, and you know, it was phenomenal for her. She was absolutely over the moon with that. you know, like you can see, it was amazing improvement for her.
Did you say she was post-pregnancy? Sorry, Ree, was
Yeah.
it? Yeah, it was. Yeah. And how long after the birth did you start the treatment?
A few years. I think it's about
A few
4
years.
years, something like that.
Well, that's good, because usually the sooner you treat it, the easier it is, and it gets more difficult, doesn't it? As it.
Yeah, definitely. But
How old was this lady?
Possibly early 40s.
Yeah, good.
And the area that I treated, it was possibly, I'm not very good with sizes, like half an A5 sheet of paper. So it was just literally sort of that rectangle that you can see where the main area of skin laxity and stretch marks are, and I just focused on that area.
And 2 sessions?
Yeah, 2 sessions with that one.
Yeah, good. I'm conscious as well that when you do a Zoom screen share, the resolution of the image isn't always as good as on the original images. So if you'd like any of these original images, we can send them you, because it's actually probably a little bit better than what you're seeing at the moment in terms of the blurriness in the images. So yeah, now we have someone here who, you know, you can see a marked improvement in these lines in the forehead area with resurface. So it is good for that deeper line, isn't it? That static wrinkle in the skin. That was 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And there's just a little close up here, so you can see all this sort of cross-linked collagen here is really softened out and improved. And again, a little bit closer, as you can see there, these lines completely resolved. That one there. I find this really good for those lines here.
Yeah.
People having the lip filler will help, but it doesn't really get
rid of that.
those really sort of, you know, nose to mouth lines, really deep smokers nose to mouth lines. If you see anybody with that, then this is a treatment for them. It's brilliant.
All runners' lines, they get the same lines as smokers.
We'll treat stretch marks as well, and this is you, Ree. So a few years ago now. I did ask Ree if it was okay to share these in here. I mean, your skin is even much improved from this one, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely so much better.
So tell people why you were having how your skin was in this image and why you were having resurfaced.
Yeah, so initially I started having resurfaced because I have got very oily skin and I've always had it. And gosh, it was probably about 9 or 10 years ago, that first photograph. And because of the amount of oiliness that I had acne, I had the breakouts, I had a bit of acne scarring. But my main focus was the amount of congestion that I got from the oiliness. And, you know, when I was in clinic, we'd be doing microdermabrasion and skin peels, and it was almost getting to the point of I was doing it twice a week to try and get rid of the congestion and keep it at bay, but nothing would get rid of it. And then the resurface handpiece was introduced, so I actually started having very superficial resurface to treat the congestion. And you know, the sort of build up of uneven texture and sort of almost try and calm the oiliness a little bit. And it weren't until, I think between these photographs, it's probably about 8 or 9 months, something like that. Because I'd had my initial course of resurface and got rid of the congestion, kept it at bay, and I was over the moon, I was happy. But then when we actually looked at the before and after photographs, I wasn't actually concerned with acne scarring and the marks, because back then I just thought, well, I wear makeup to cover it now, and I always will do, it's fine. And then when we actually looked at the photographs from doing that superficial resurface, we noticed that actually, like, my acne scarring's pretty much gone from those sessions. So yeah, it was sort of a side effect, but it was an amazing side effect for me.
And I mean, this is a brilliant image pre and post treatment again of that very deep acne scarring. So difficult thing to treat, you know, difficult thing to get results with in a very safe manner. And I guess that's the point really with this technology, is the safety profile is extremely high. You know, in terms of adverse incident, there isn't, is there?
No, not at all.
And so this deep pitted acne scarring resolves very well. So yeah, these images will be a bit clearer on our website.
Yeah, they will.
And this was one of our customers in the clinic as well, wasn't it? So I don't think the picture necessarily does it justice, but these were very deep, very, very deep back scarring, and it's almost completely flat when this client and the customer, it's flat, isn't it?
Yeah, with this lady in particular, she, in the first photograph, she was at a point that she was so conscious with the scarring on her back that she, whenever she was on holiday, anything like that, she would have her back covered all the time. No one would see her back. And the current after photograph that we've got there, I think, was after 3 sessions, I think. I can't quite see it on my screen, but she was at the point where, yes, you can still see some of the scars, but they had improved so much. They'd flattened out, they were a lot more even, that she was at a point where she was happily wearing lower back tops. And when she was on holiday, she wasn't bothered about covering her back up anymore. So it was amazing for her mentally as well as results physically as well.
Mm-hmm. And how much would we charge for a treatment like this?
So typically we would charge for treating full face resurface, we charge approximately £300 per treatment. And then if we're treating body areas such as stretch marks, we look at sort of one standard area is about 1 A4 sheet of paper, and we charge approximately 200 per session.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's quite standard. I know somebody asked it in our Facebook group the other day, didn't they? And yeah, most people are around that sort of 295, 300 bracket. For those of you in the audience that are using this, I've got a question just about the images. Yes, if you go onto our customer support portal and into your product, then you can download these images to use. We just ask that you make sure they're always credited to the wonderful clinics who've produced them for us. Okay, so then a quick chat just regarding non-ablative fractional lasers. So non-ablative, remember, is still just water in the skin absorbing the light and creating heat, but only getting to a temperature where you cause trauma, a little bit of trauma, as opposed to ablating. So the skin remains intact, it doesn't ablate or vaporize at all. You can do it in a fractional mode, so you can do it where it treats the whole area of skin, or you can do it where it does micro spots, like we saw earlier in that fractional image. So you can see here a zone of tissue. You can see how it's just slightly darker colour within this treatment zone, showing that there's been interaction with the tissue here, that we've created a bit of thermal damage, and that's with a fractional non-ablative laser. So you will typically see these listed in wavelengths in the 1500s. Okay, so if you see a laser that's 1540, 1550, they're typically erbium glass wavelengths. Some companies market them as sort of specific names, so to speak, but if you look at the actual wavelength, you can generally work out whether you've got an ablative or a non-ablative laser. So 1540, 1550, and of course, what also is within here is ND YAG. So long pulsed ND YAG at 1064 is a non-ablative laser for skin rejuvenation. So that, again, same as erbium glass, absorbed by the water, creates heat and causes some dermal remodeling. So these are essentially a much milder form of rejuvenation now. So you can get some downtime, but it's typically just a bit of mild redness, maybe for 1 to 2 days, but unlikely. It's probably just a couple of hours that you're red for. I mean, that certainly the lasers that we've worked with that are non-ablative will typically be red for an hour or two, probably, and then if that, yeah, a little bit of swelling in the area isn't unusual. And it's a course of treatments, this, so it's going to be 4 to 6 treatments, 2 or 4 weeks apart. The results will be not as obvious as your ablative resurfacing, for sure, but you can still get very nice tightening rejuvenation results with them. And again, this would be something that we'd recommend a level 4. You'd have a level 4 qualification for So this is someone who's been treated with Erbium glass laser, 1550, and you can see a really, you know, it's a nice improvement. It's subtle, but it's a nice improvement on the skin there. And again, nice improvement on the neck area. Because this is a bit less aggressive, it means that you can go off the face. It opens the treatment up to more skin types. There's less side effects. So it's like the laser version of radio frequency a little bit. Okay. Any questions so far then, just before we move on and we take a look at microneedling, needling RF and HIFU?
So,
everyone's still with us, Ree, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
we're not doing too bad.
we're okay. So it's just a longer webinar than usual. We're usually about an hour or so, but we're in the last two topics now, which is the microneedling and the HIFU. Okay, so microneedling. So it is what it says on the box, essentially. So very small needles are used to create tiny punctures in the skin, and that's our wound. So we've predominantly been talking about things so far that operate via a photothermal reaction, a light heat reaction, or in the case of radio frequency, an energy wave that creates heat through vibration of the water molecules. Microneedling is different. There's not a heat interaction here with standard needles, but you are getting the mechanical trauma of actually piercing through the skin and initiating a wound. And as a result, you do still get wound healing. It's a bit like a fractional laser in that you're not treating the whole area of the skin, you're using microspots, you know, so you will leave healthy tissue in between the needles, and that will assist with skin healing. What's nice about microneedling is that you can combine it with topical products. It can help with the penetration of topical ingredients into deeper layers of the skin. And I think it's something that, again, works very well in combination. To be honest, they all do. They all work really well in combination with each other. Whatever you've got, they can be combined and put together, you know, pretty much without restriction. There's things to consider when you look at microneedling, and I guess when we talk about microneedling, obviously you've got roller options, although less popular now than they used to be. When you were rolling needles over the skin, I know there were some concerns that the needles would sort of pucker and would pull through the skin as you had that rolling action. So very popular devices at the moment are sort of needle pens, as you can see an example of one here, where there's it might be electronic, so it automatically stamps. It might be that you press a button to individually stamp it. It might be a combination of both. Some of the things you'd want to consider with microneedling would be consumable cost. So just have a look at how much these tips should be disposable, obviously, and you'll pay per tip usually. So looking into the consumable cost would be something to definitely consider. The needle depth. So obviously you can pierce the skin and draw no blood, or you can pierce to a depth of 2 mil, 2.5 mil even, and be drawing blood. And that's going to affect your hygiene protocols because there's going to be a greater risk of infection. So that needs to be taken into account. Your insurance as well is worth checking with your insurance, you know, depending on your qualifications, what depth of needle you can use. And also the number of pins. So this is going to affect now the density of the treatment. So you can see here an example of a 10-pin disposable tip and a 25-pin disposable tip. So obviously a treatment with that 25-pin is going to be more invasive than a treatment with the 10-pin, but the 10-pin might be very useful if you're working around very delicate small areas, sort of nooks and crannies that you're trying to get into. Speed settings are another thing to just be aware of and have a look at, you know, how many settings has it got? Can you alter the depth of the needle? Can you alter how fast it stamps? All these things would be important to look at. But this sort of technology does treat quite a wide range of concerns, because as it goes through the epidermis, it will cause cell renewal. Because it is going through the epidermis and causing that physical trauma, you'll get some nice cell renewal from it. And then as it pierces through into the dermis as well, obviously creating a wound there will result in dermal remodeling. So things like your scarring, your pigment, stretch marks, pore size, texture, tone, tightness can all be improved. What you lack in this technology is the heat. And so, although you're causing the physical trauma, you aren't getting the heat trauma with your sort of standard needles. And so without bulk heating the dermis, it is tricky to get a big improvement in laxity, particularly around like this area here. So, and you can see some before and afters, you know, where it does look great, but you know, certainly heat generating treatments are typically much better at getting more severe, more noticeable tightening improvement in the skin. Now, another option would be to look at radio frequency with microneedles. Okay, so now what we have is we have devices which can, as you can see here, this one actually includes vacuum as well. So you can actually sort of suck up that little bit of skin and pierce the skin with the needles. Brilliant, you get that physical trauma. And then you can actually emit a tiny amount of radio frequency current, either across the whole length of the needle or some of them just the very tip of the needle. And that small surge of radio frequency energy then gives you bulk heating. So now we have a really nice kind of dual effect of the physical trauma of the needle along with the bulk heating of the radio frequency. So any questions on needle or needle RF? Any?
Got a question from Sue, well, comment from Susan regarding the sort of between the 10 and 25 pin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the less the needles, the easier she finds it goes in.
Yeah, okay. Less resistance and pull as you're stamping. Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, with regards to, would you say the 10 pin is not as deep? I mean, obviously it depends on the length of the needle, doesn't it?
It's the length of the needle, yeah. So the pin is about the density and the needle depth is your 1 mil, your 1.5 mil, etc. So you could have a 10 pin with a 2 mil depth and a 25 pin with a 1 mil depth, you know. So yeah, the needle depth, what you really want to be able to do is control the two. So no matter which tip you put on, if you can see here, this one's got the disposable needle, so you'll decide whether you want 10 or 25 pin and exchange it, and then you just turn this control knob to alter the depth of those needles. And it will be different for different devices, I'm sure.
Different skins as well. Like somebody said about the 25 pin being better for the body. And obviously if you were treating something like stretch marks, you'd probably need a deeper penetration depth than a longer needle, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. So deeper and deeper concerns as well. So if you were just looking at kind of getting some nice epidermal renewal, then you could use less than a mil, you know, and that feels quite nice actually when you try that. We've got one in our office at the moment. And that feels, yeah, quite nice. Whereas when you start to get deeper and you start to you know, move into the needle depth where you are able to draw blood to get to dermis to create quite a little bit of trauma there, then obviously the downtime would be more for that. So you would experience more swelling, possibly a little bit of discomfort, so you might even want to be using anesthetics at this point, and you'll need potentially less treatments, although overall you're recommending 6 sessions for microneedling, as with most of the things we discussed today, about 6 sessions. You'll get some nice instant results from that sort of plumpness and the swelling, which may last for up to 7 days, but it will still take that 4 to 6 months for the full rejuvenation effect to occur because of that dermal remodeling that you're creating. Is this something Lynton may be supplying? Maybe. Maybe coming soon. Okay, so yeah, indications, covered those. So last but certainly not least is HIFU, high intensity focused ultrasound. So you can see a typical sort of handpiece here for HIFU, and this really is again a mechanical interaction with the tissue. So essentially what it is ultrasound waves, and rather than the ultrasound waves kind of dispersing through the skin in a random or dispersed pattern, they're high intensity and they're focused. So that means, as you can see from this diagram here, they focus inwards, they come in a triangle formation like this, and so the energy, the acoustic wave, is really focused within this point, like a magnifying glass focusing the light. That's how HIFU works. So you cause a trauma zone, a small sort of micro spot trauma zone, quite deep in the skin, whilst leaving the upper layers of the skin, the epidermis, untouched. So you've got deep dermal remodeling without epidermal disruption. And that is good because you don't get the downtime, any of the downtime associated when you disrupt the epidermis. But it's bad because you then can't use this technology to really effectively treat epidermal conditions. So pros and cons again. There are HIFU systems out there that can get to a depth of 4.5 mil. And at 4.5 mil, you're into the SMAS layer. Okay, so remember earlier we talked about that layer being this layer of thick collagen and elastin and fat cells, and how it's helping to connect the muscles to the dermis, and that's the layer that when you have a facelift that they'll move. That's the SMAS layer. So you can rejuvenate that layer in a similar way to the dermis. So initiate, improvement in collagen and elastin within that layer. So at 4.5 mil, that's where you're thought to get to this layer, and can cause some really nice lifting and tightening. And so when you look at HIFU, just think lifting, tightening. That's essentially what it's very good for, particularly around this area here. So jawline, chin, this area here. So it's different to RF. It's not bulk heating like this. It's these individual micro spots quite deep within the skin. Very little downtime, suitable for all skin types. So some nice advantages. But the disadvantages, it's going to be important to do the right patient selection. It's not going to be suitable for all of the customers coming through the door. So from an economical, commercial point of view, it's probably not the first technology you'd go for. You'd probably go for something that's more applicable to a wider range of people. But then as your business develops and grows, HIFU could be something that you look at to bring in to specifically treat these areas, and of course it will do the upper face as well, but it is particularly good at that real sort of loss of firmness, the laxity around the chin and the jawline area. You don't need anaesthetic, but I've had one of these and it packs a punch. So you definitely want some painkillers before you go in to have it done. But that is, that is symptomatic of it getting very deep in the tissue, isn't it? Nice safety profile, and again, we'd recommend that you have a level 4 qual to do HIFU. There's a nice before and after pic here, which I've taken from JC's. So thank you to those for this, and you can see really nice improvement after 3 sessions. And again here, so I've taken this from Life Plus Clinics, baseline, really nice improvement in this area here. So an interesting technology. Okay. So any technology questions?
Just got a question from Susan. HIFU, is this what Americans call ultherapy?
Yeah, so ultherapy is a brand name. A company called Mertz. They were, I don't know if they were first to market, but they're definitely one of the first to market. Yeah, with HIFU. And yeah, the device itself is called Ulthera, I think. And then the brand is Ultherapy, which is distributed by Mertz in the UK. Yeah.
We've just got one question from Paulina, sort of going back to your RF and microneedling compared to fractional laser.
Yes.
So if you're looking, would you go for a needle pen as the new treatment if you've got fractional laser, or would laser be better than your needling?
Depends on the fractional laser that you're using.
Yeah. So I know, Paulina, you've got our resurface handpiece, I think.
Yeah, so they're very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. I don't think that you would rush out to buy a needle device if you'd already got your fractional resurfacing, because that's it is doing all and more. Yeah. The only thing I would say is there if you wanted to bring it in as a lower cost option, so like more from a commercial perspective, so you bring it in as an introductory lower price treatment, and then you build people up from that to your fractional resurfacing.
Yeah. Cool, no problem, Paulina.
Lynton HIFU.
So an interesting comment from Sam, actually. So you'll all be able to read this. So a dermatologist that we work with once told Sam that she used the deepest needles and could never get the same result as she could with a fractional laser. So potentially you are getting more heat and potentially more collagen and that more inflammation that you can with a fractional laser. So yeah, potentially getting better results with laser.
Heat is a massive factor, you know, really bulk heating that dermis gives you amazing results. And when you can then combine that with surface ablation, you know, you've got the best of both worlds, really. So okay, all right, so I'm now going to bore you with some of our Lynton machines, so you can shut your ears if you're not interested at all, but I'm going to run through some of the platforms that we have and the technologies that are available on them in case any of you are interested and are looking at different types of technology at the moment. So just a quick whiz through of a couple of systems here. So the Lumina, this is our Lumina, this is our flagship product, used in a lot of NHS hospitals, used by dermatologists across the UK. It has both laser and IPL on the platform, and it does hair and tattoo removal, but it actually has a lot of rejuvenation options as well. So it's got ablative and non-ablative laser. So the ablative laser is the Erbium resurface that we were talking about earlier, and the non-ablative is the ND YAG long pulsed laser. So you've got a really gentle and then a more aggressive form of non-ablative ablative resurfacing with those options. You can either deliver in fractional or in non-fractional mode. So you've got, again, that switch of modality, whichever you would prefer to use. And of course, you've got the 650 and the 585 handpiece, which will allow you to do all the vessels, the pigment, the acne, the Illumi facial. So, you know, in terms of a treatment menu, you've got a lot. You've got an awful lot that you could start a business with just Illumina, and many clinics have in the UK just started their business with Illumina, because it offers so much. But it does build as you grow. So you can start with it just having 1 or 2 handpieces and build it through to the full range of handpieces over time as your business grows. Now, another option might be a standalone IPL device, and we have this one called the X-Lite. And the nice thing about the X-Lite is that you've got a really good value piece of equipment with lots of different treatment options again. So you've got hair removal, the vascular lesions, and that covers the rosacea, the red veins, the hemangiomas, etc. You've got pigmented lesions that you can treat with it, acne, and then also you can do that general skin rejuvenation, improving that collagen production, combining it with the Illumi facial. So you've got a really good rejuvenation device that can also do hair removal as well. And it's excellent hair removal. And then finally, we have a device called the 3Juve. And I mean, actually, pretty much all the devices in our platform do some kind of rejuvenation. So don't worry if you've got one of them and they're not on this list. It's just these are the three most obvious, I guess, for rejuvenation. So the 3Juve we designed because we think a lot of clinics, you know, they've maybe got their hair removal laser, they've got their tattoo removal laser, and they're doing their injectables, and they want one thing that's going to treat as many different facial rejuvenation concerns as possible, and that is the 3Juve. So this device has got Erbium laser, the fractional ablative Erbium laser. This does all of the lines, the wrinkles, the scarring, the texture, lumps and bumps, the melia, the congestion, the open pores. Huge range of options. You've got dynamic reflex-based IPL, so a really powerful IPL for all of the discoloration, the redness, the vessels, the pigment, the acne, you know, any kind of colour problem. You've got that handpiece, and we combine it with radio frequency. So then a radio frequency handpiece which does the lifting, which does the tightening, which does the dermal remodeling. So for many different reasons, this device is a commercial tick in the box. You know, it gives you the ability to treat people who don't like advanced treatments and people that love advanced treatments. It gives you the ability to treat all skin types all year round. Gives you the ability to do things that are very safe, some things which are a little bit more aggressive, which means subtle results through to dramatic results. And pretty much any single person that walks through your door could have a 3Juve treatment. Like who could you not treat? Everybody, from younger skins to older skins, from dry to oily, from acne to rosacea, you've got a treatment option. So it is a really, really good device for just skin in a box. In fact, when we had this in R&D, we called it the skin box, didn't we?
Yeah.
We didn't think that was quite good enough to bring to the market, but skin box is essentially what this device is. All nice, tried and tested technologies. Right, I think we have, oh wow, good, 2 hours, dead on time, brilliant. Yeah. Any last minute questions anyone has, please drop them in the chat box. Any questions that we've missed, that we've not answered, drop them in and we'll do our best to answer them now. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with us this morning. I know you're all busy, hopefully getting ready to reopen as soon as possible.
We've got a good question from Sonia. So she's asking, which machine would you recommend for colleges to use with level 4, level 5 students? So obviously looking at level 4 being your hair removal, skin rejuvenation, and level 5 tattoo removal.
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, we tend to sell Exolites and Luminas to colleges, don't we?
Yeah.
Exolite being good because it's IPL, it gives you hair and lots of different rejuvenation options. And the Lumina, if you're doing the level 5s with the tattoo, obviously you can add tattoo removal onto Lumina. So it tends to be those two that we sell to colleges, and we do have we've got quite a few colleges, haven't we, using Lynton equipment to do their level 4s and 5s. So kind of the model of how you do that training is there in place. We can do train the trainer, can't we, for colleges as well, if needed. So yeah.
And let's have a look. Yeah, you're right, Andrew, those 2 hours have flown by.
Yeah, thanks for your interaction, everyone. It's really good when people get involved and we can answer questions and go through. We've got loads more webinars online on our YouTube channel. So throughout this lockdown period, we've been doing lots of different webinars on a range of different subjects. We've got an amazing one tomorrow. So tomorrow, you must join us. We've got Richard Crawford Small, this chap here in the middle. I sort of only want Lynton clinics to know this because it's so good, but I'll promote it here. So it's basically he's developed this process, let's say, that is going to dramatically help your digital marketing, essentially. Okay, so digital marketing being blogs, videos, social media posts, and social media stories. Rich and his team at the Aesthetic Entrepreneurs have come up with this brilliant system that allows you to take a small little bit of content and turn it into loads and loads of content, saving you time, saving you effort and energy. And that's a free webinar we're running tomorrow at 11 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday the 9th. So find it on our social medias, register and check into that one if you're interested in learning how to maximize really your social media and your digital content. So yeah, and then next week we've got a really interesting one on Google performance, so search engine optimization with Google. And I think we may be doing a semi-permanent eyebrow removal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So more looking at semi-permanent makeup, so not necessarily just brows, but looking at what's on the market, you know, what sort of things or treatments clients are having. Can you treat them if you've got a tattoo removal system? How do you go about it? So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, really interesting topic, I think, that one.
Yeah.
So yep, thank you again. I don't think there's any more questions. Just to let you know to check out our website for different qualifications that we offer through our training academy and masterclasses. So today's been a really sort of an introduction, but you know, we run masterclasses that go really in depth into various subjects, so it's well worth checking online for the next dates for the different courses that we have available.
Yeah, and last one, if anybody did want to get in touch with Lynton about different systems and stuff like that, how would they go about it?
Okay, so on our website there's an inquiry form, so you can just go on there, make a quick inquiry, drop your phone number and your email in, tell us which devices you're interested in, we can send you prices, and obviously a lot more information. And we're doing virtual demos now, so some of our people have got systems in their homes so they can show you them online, and if not, then you can just have a business chat just to learn, okay, well, what technology might be right for you at the moment. And yeah, more than happy to provide prices and full information.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, well, thanks ever so much, Reen. Thanks everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. I hope you're all well, and look forward to seeing some of you tomorrow on our other webinar.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.